Hi, I hope you're doing well. In the middle of this pandemic, 2020, I've been very drawn, even more so than I usually am, to apocalyptic, dystopian novels, especially along the lines of pandemics. I'm going to talk to you today about some of the better ones, seeing some ways you can delve even deeper into this pandemic and/or understanding the human psyche in the midst of troubling times. The first book that I want to talk about is a book that is very, very famous. In fact, I think they're doing a new movie or TV series, I believe, on Amazon Prime coming up, and that is The Stand by Stephen King. This is, of course, a classic. I'm not going to belabor this one too much. Many of you have probably already read it. It is a fantastic book. I will never forget the feeling of reading the first several chapters and how it's, I won't give too much away, but it's like this pandemic and what happens. And I was just, with every page, more and more interested in what was going to happen. I think in many ways, my love of apocalyptic literature started with the book The Stand. The second book I want to talk about is The Road, Cormac McCarthy. This book is awesome. Very, very accessible, very easy to read, yet also very dark and difficult. Deals with some tough issues. It's a story of a father and son who, very simply, as the title suggests, are on the road. You can tell they're in some sort of post-apocalyptic world. Things are very, very bad, and it's how these two individuals try to survive and make their way in this dark, dark world. The third book on this list is On the Beach by Neville Shute. This is one of those books I read a while back, and it's always stuck with me. There's something very, very telling about this book. It does a wonderful job of focusing on the nature of man, right? Human nature and what it means to be human and the struggles we have as we live life. In this story, it's this apocalyptic narrative where the world is literally coming to an end. This entire book is taking place on Australia. And Australia, because of the way it's situated on the planet, in a sense, it's going down last. They've seen the rest of the world already crumble to nothing, and the inhabitants of Australia are waiting for the apocalypse to come. And it's what plays out in that, these various characters and their stories and what they choose to do. And the next book on my list, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a very, very interesting book. I've read it literally within the past week and a half, and I do enjoy it. I'm finding that it's kind of simmering with me a little bit, but it is very beautifully written. I will admit that it took me a little while to get into it. Next on my list is Earth Abides by George Stewart. This book is very, very interesting, told in a way that is quite different from a lot of apocalyptic novels. It is a novel about the end of the world, what happens after the end of the world, so to speak. And it's told, without giving too much away, over the course of decades and decades. So you see this long, generational almost story told through the lens of a particular group of people. And it's got some really beautiful moments. Next is one called Wastelands. This is great. It's a collection of short stories. They're all about the apocalypse, pre-apocalypse, post-apocalypse, that sort of thing. You have some great, great authors in these books. I can't say enough about them. I've loved these stories for a long time now. Pick them up. You can read them, read a story before you go to bed at night. They're really, really excellent stories, and there's a couple of gems. Another classic here, I Am Legend, right, by Richard Matheson. I'm sure many of you have probably seen this movie. Will Smith starred in this one. This is a great story. It's just kind of, to my mind, it's like a classic, apocalyptic story of, a lone survivor in a sense, and, what he does to survive, how he gets by on a day-to-day basis. And it's just really well told. I did not want to put this one down. definitely hooks you in, and the story just keeps moving. A lot like the movie, actually. The movie is very well told as well. Although I will say, the movie and the book are very different stories. So if you've seen the movie, don't think that you've read the book. They are different. Next is a book I've read recently as well, called Blindness by Jose Saramago. This was a really interesting book. It's another pandemic type book where, due to this disease or something genetic, people are going blind. Mass numbers of people going blind, and kind of how society deals with that. I went back and forth on this one. There were moments of it that I did really enjoy, and other times I found myself a little less interested. Next is one of my favorite authors. This is called Adjustment Day by Chuck Palahniuk. This is an amazing story and has a lot of things to say about, you might say, our current political situation, the way that something can come along, like a pandemic. However, in this book, it's a little different than a pandemic, and change society maybe forever. Or you can definitely say leave a mark on society that doesn't go away. Year One by Nora Roberts. I'm not going to say a lot about this one because frankly I didn't like it that much. I'm just mentioning it because it is, an apocalyptic novel. Next is The Water Knife by Paolo Bacigalupi. This is an awesome book. It's actually based on a short story that I mentioned earlier in one of those books called Wastelands. He had a story called The Tamarisk Hunters. And it's just this really interesting dystopian situation where, instead of a pandemic, imagine if all of the water in the world was an extremely short supply. And, I mean extremely short supply. And how political structures are set up to get, the powerful ones get more water than others, and how that creates water poverty and that sort of thing. 1 Second After by William Forster. Is that right? Yeah, William Forstchen. 1 Second After is a post-apocalyptic in the true sense of the word, in that it's almost like a post-nuclear novel. A bomb goes off, but it's not a typical bomb where it's nuclear fallout that's the problem. It's what's called an EMP, but it basically where all electricity gone, right? Anything that has anything remotely to do with electricity is out, done, no more, doesn't work anymore. Can't even start your car if you have an electric ignition, right? Robert McCammon's Swan Song. This is an awesome novel. For those of you that have read The Stand, Swan Song and The Stand, I think, are very much in the same sort of world. They kind of accomplish some of the same things. Swan Song it's a page turner. You're interested the whole time. The plot is fascinating. But on top of this kind of what you might call a typical apocalyptic story, you have this surreal, supernatural, spiritual battle going on. Next is Alas, Babylon by Pat Frank. This one is a little bit more of a straightforward, the world comes to an end, and it's a small community, and how do they, pull themselves up by their bootstraps and move forward with life. Deals with some of the real world structures, like how do we get water going again? Can we get a generator, working, that sort of thing. And last, I want to mention a couple of, classics, one better than the other. But Michael Crichton has two kind of apocalyptic books. One is Congo. Many of you guys have probably seen the movie. It was a famous movie for a while. The book is fun. It's a page turner. It's interesting. Kind of just an action, plot-packed story, energetic and exciting. But Michael Crichton's real masterpiece when it comes to this, and a true pandemic, is the Andromeda Strain. Awesome story, well told. This is Michael Crichton at his prime. It's an early novel of his. You can tell he really put his heart into this one. I've just always loved it. It's just that sense of, impending doom, and it's a matter of, that, just to give you a quick little primer into how it opens, right? You have this, I won't give anything away, but you have this, let's just say, this strain of life, right? Maybe a biological thing, and it's killing people, right? People are dying because of it. And the government at first tries to keep it all closed up and everything safe and protected. And you just know it's going to break out, right? You have that feeling that, okay, it's, what's going to happen? What's going to be the mistake that lets this thing run free? And kind of like, how government handles lots of things. They don't do a very good job of it. So it's a brilliant story, a lot of fun to read, exciting, a little freaky at some points, but really well told. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this list. It's a lot of books, I know, but there's some great stories in there, especially some of those short stories, and some of these novels I think will help give you a perspective on just the place where we are, right? I know a lot of these are fiction, right? You might want to say, yeah, Jeremy, it's all made up stuff, has no connection to the real world. That's not true. And if you think that, you're not reading fiction correctly. Fiction has a lot to say about the real world and real life. So that's what I encourage for you. Read. Dig deep into things. Don't do it because people tell you to or you feel you have to. Do it because you enjoy it. Go to those areas of life that give you passion and energy for wanting to do it, and let that grow inside of you and give you a perspective that's unique to the world, and take that forward, and don't be afraid to stand up for that view.